Hey guys, Sarek here, and today I'm going to bring another budget deck profile to you, and this time I've got Salamangreat to look at. So it's one of the easiest budget decks to build because it all came out in a structure deck, which if you can find some copies of for a reasonable price is the absolute best way to start making this deck. You get the entire core of the deck, you get Ash Blossom, which is the most expensive card in this build, and you get Baylynx, which hasn't been reprinted anywhere else yet. So it's the absolute best way of finding it. It is getting a bit hard to find now, but if you can find one for a good price, I'd definitely recommend picking that up. So let's get onto the profile. I'm going to move really quickly because the deck is well known, it's been out for a long time, and I'll talk more about the end why I think this deck is so good to pick up. So to start off, we've got Salamangreat Gazelle. Now, Gazelle is your best starter in the deck. It's at 1. You need this card to win, generally. It searches every single relevant card in your deck, sticking it in the graveyard where you have really easy access to it with so many of your monsters. You've got lots of monsters that can bring themselves back from the graveyard, and then you've got your link monsters that can bring back your spells and traps. It's the reason we run so much searching. You need this card. If it wasn't at 1, we would run 3. Next we have 3 copies of Foxy. Foxy is another way we have of accessing Gazelle. It's probably the worst way we have, after potentially around similar level to Pot of Desires, because it only looks at the top 3 cards. But sometimes you absolutely need it. It can still start your Salamangreat combos because it can get you to Baylynx, it can get you further than that. And you can also special summon it as well, although you can't special summon it if you've used its effect already. However, if you don't have another material, you can always summon it and then activate a face-up spell trap and bring it back after making a Baylynx. So there are options for getting it back to get to your Link 2 if you don't have the Gazelle. 2 copies of Spinny. This is not as important since Mirage Stallion got banned, but it's just free extension. It can discard itself, but you can still use its res effect, so you can stick it in the graveyard if it's in your hand, you can stick it in the graveyard from your deck with Gazelle. It's just a free monster, essentially. It banishes itself, but generally, once you've got your engine rolling, you don't need more than 2 copies. 2 copies of Jack Jaguar. This is your general recursion monster. It's your biggest level 4 body. It recycles your links, particularly your Baylynxes and your Sunlight Wolves, which are very important that you don't run out of them because, again, they're what keep your advantage and your resilience going in this deck. So, very important card in the deck. Then we just have a couple of one-offs. We've got Salamangreat Fowl, which is, again, just another card that can freely special summon itself from your hand to get your second monster on the field. And it can also give a little bit of disruption by preventing them from activating a spell or trap card that they have set. And then finally we have Salamangreat Falco, which allows you again to recycle your spells and traps from your graveyard and also special summon itself by bouncing the Salamangreats you control. So again, it allows you to recycle some links that might have been spent and bring itself back, or put a card like Spinny back in your hand, and then you can discard it and bring that back, and so on. Very, very useful card. So now we get on to the extra monsters that aren't part of the Salamangreat archetype, but you still need to play. So we've got 3 Lady Debug, self-explanatory, searches Gazelle, searches every other monster in your deck pretty much. It's really, really good, and we can now run 3 again. 3 Buffalo, lets us draw cards. So you make your Baylynx, you discard a Spinny, you draw 2 cards, you can then bring back the Spinny. Maybe you find something like the Gazelle with that then. It just helps get your advantage, keeps your hand full, gives you more options, and sets up your grave. 3 Ash Blossom, the most expensive card in this deck. Again, it's the best hand trap around at the moment, and importantly, it's got 0 attack, which is relevant for Helio. It stops so much. You know what Ash Blossom does. It stops searching, stops special summoning, stops sending to the grave. 3 Effect Veiler. This is our budget impermanence, because that's £15 a copy at the moment, so we'll pay £2 a copy instead. It's not quite as good, but again, it has 0 attack, which is relevant for Helio and can get you out of some very sticky situations. 3 copies of Parallel Exceed. This is a free rank 4. You draw this, you make your Balinks, you can immediately summon your Parallel Exceed from the deck, well, from your hand, then one from your deck, and that allows you to make a free Abyss Dweller, which is almost just game against some decks, and it just makes it very difficult to play around, especially with all the other disruption that you have. Three copies of Will of the Salamangreat. This is so good for recursion and extension. It allows for really, really explosive turns by when you have a Sunlight Wolf or a Helio on the field, allowing you to get 3 potential extra materials on board for a push with a card like Boral Sword, or to set up an unbreakable board with cards like Transcode Talker, or to break their board with a card like Borreload Dragon. Salamangreat Circle, it's another search card, it's also protection for your link monsters. It's a good card. It's at 1, otherwise we'd run more copies. On Salamangreat Sanctuary, we only need to run one of these because Balink searches it, which is really, really easy to use, and we've got ways of setting it back out of the graveyard if we lose it. It allows you to reincarnation summon, so use a link monster to summon another link monster with the same name, which gives you a lot of your Salamangreat effects, so that's part of the core of the deck, so we have to run one copy. Its other effect isn't used very much at all. 3 copies of Pot of Desires. Drawing cards is good. Be careful if you use this when you don't have access to Gazelle, because you really don't want to banish your copy of Gazelle. So unless you absolutely have no other way of getting the Gazelle, it's not worth using until you have the Gazelle in hand. Three copies of Cynet Mining. More search cards. Gets you Gazelle. Sticks cards that you can recur in the graveyard. It's really, really cheap now after the Megatin reprint, so pick up your copies quickly. One called by. Getting Ash Blossom sucks. This card is now much cheaper, even from my last video deck profile where it was about £4 a copy. It's now gone down to about £1.50 a copy with the maximum gold reprint. So now onto the traps. We just have 3 traps. We have 1 copy of Salamangreat Rage, which, when you control a link monster, is non-targeting destruction, because it targets your link monster, not their control, not the monsters they control, and you have ways of searching it and recycling it with Sunlight Wolf and Gazelle. Then finally, 2 copies of Salamangreat Raw. It's your Omni Negate, and it can set itself back, so it's just very, very useful for just a big fat no button. So that's the main deck. It's 40 cards exactly. Now we'll get on to the extra deck. Balinks is the start of all your link climbing and combo plays. It searches your Sanctuary, which is very important because it allows you to chain block your Gazelle's effect, which I'll go into a bit more detail, but it essentially means your Gazelle's effect, send a card from deck to the graveyard, can't be Ash Blossomed. And then it's also free protection in grave for any of your other link monsters. Oh no, any other Salamangreat card, I'm sorry. 3 Sunlight Wolf. This is your main advantage and recursion engine. It's got a very long effect, so I'll just hold that there for now. It allows you to recycle your Gazelle to hand. It allows you to set back spells and traps that you've used or sent to the graveyard, and it allows you to put your link monsters back in your extra deck. It's really good. It's the reason this deck has such a good grind game. Finally, 2 copies of Salamangreat Heat Leo. It spins a back row when it comes into play, and it can also set attacks of your opponent's monsters to any attack value you've got in your graveyard. It's the reason why having cards like Ash Blossom and Veiler is really good in this deck, because it gives you an easy access to 0 attack that you can use, which facilitates your OTK plays. One copy of Splash Mage. This is just free extension. It brings out any Cyburst monster in your graveyard, locks you into Cyburst monsters, but nearly all of your extra deck is Cyburst anyway. You're generally using this turn 1, so you're not making a Borreload or a Boral Sword at that point anyway, and you can just use it after you've made your Dweller if you have a Parallel Exceed play. We're running a Nightmare package. I've chosen these 2 because Unicorn is quite expensive at the moment, so it helps keep the cost of the deck down. Phoenix obviously is an out to any spell or trap, and Cerberus is obviously an out to monsters. Again, helps set up your graveyard, just very useful cards to have access to. One Transcode Talker. This allows you to protect your Link monsters, give them a nice big attack boost, and it also allows you to extend getting back your Link monsters, giving you more and more recursion, recycling, and allowing it to set up its own protection by finding a link point and making the co-link there. Finally, for Link monsters, we have 1 Boral Sword and 1 Borreload. Boral Sword has got a lot cheaper with its reprint in Maximum Gold. It's your OTK machine, and Borreload is your board breaking machine. If they have a Towers-like monster that you find difficult to out, chances are Borreload can out it, and then Boral Sword, once you've cleared their board, just wins you the game immediately. And then finally, we have Abyss Dweller. This could be any rank 4. I just thought Abyss Dweller was the best generic rank 4 with the best effect to make turn 1. It could be a Baguska, a Tornado Dragon, or any sort of similar rank 4. So that's the deck profile. And the whole deck comes to about £90, which is really, really cheap for a deck that is this strong and still relevant, and that's with buying all cards individually. If you can find copies of the structure deck, then it obviously gets even cheaper. Now, I think this is a really, really good deck to have because I think it teaches you a lot about the game. It encourages interactive gameplay with not being a sort of, yes, it's a combo deck, but it's not a combo that wins you the game, it's an advantage combo. So it teaches you about card advantage. I think it also teaches you about some of the rulings, such as simultaneous effects go on chain and chain blocking, which is the interaction between Gazelle and Balinks. And also, I think because of the fact that it's got so much search power and so consistent, you're very unlikely to have non-games with it where you just can't play. So I think it makes it a lot better than some other decks where you sometimes just draw your 5 cards and you look at it and you're like, I actually just can't play the game. So, for upgrades, for the main deck, the big one would be Infinite Impermanence to replace your effect failures. It's a much better card going first or second. It can be used on your own turn to stop monster effects, unlike Veiler, which can't. And obviously, it's a trap card, so has all the synergies that come with that as well for bringing back your Salamangreat monsters. Another one to look at would be Phantasme. Again, just a really, really good hand trap. Allows you to sculpt your hand really, really well, which sets up your hand. Again, it's another way of finding the Gazelle. Allows you to go second a bit better. And it also provides some more negation. Within the extra deck, the biggest upgrade you could get would be a copy of Access Code Talker, which could essentially replace both the Borreload and the Boral Sword by providing with an easy way to break boards and an easy way to OTK. Unfortunately, that runs you a significantly higher price tag at the moment, which is obviously why it's not in this deck. Other options would be Nightmare Unicorn at around £10 to £15 a copy, or IP Masquerena, that again can also lead towards a more disruptive style of extra deck, allowing you to make nightmares generally in your opponent's turn. So that's all for this video. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed.